Well, let me start by saying that I believe that all Oregonians at the end of the day want the same thing. I think all of us want to be able to meet our basic needs with certainty and with dignity. I think we all want to have the opportunity to achieve our full potential. I think we want to work hard with the belief that hard work will be rewarded with a better life. I think we want to leave our kids better off than we were, both economically and environmentally. And I think we want to achieve a greater quality of life in harmony with and not at the expense of the majesty of the Pacific Northwest. These are Oregon aspirations, and in order to achieve them, we need to create an economy that works for all of us, regardless of where we live, who we love, or what language we speak at home. We need to create an economy that leads to equity and prosperity, an economy that creates living wage jobs and pathways that lead to those jobs, an economy that equips Oregonians with the education and skill and training they need to secure those jobs, and an economy that does so in concert with and not at the detriment of our natural environment. My goal as governor in this budget is to make sure that the resources are in place to make sure that we have an economy that does in fact work for all of us. Over the past 4 years, we've made some very difficult decisions in this state to improve how tax dollars are spent. We've reduced the cost of health care by shifting our focus from after-the-fact acute care to prevention and wellness and community-based management of chronic conditions. We've eliminated the need to build new prisons by investing directly in the safety of our communities. And we've taken steps to reduce the long-term cost of our public employee pension system. Together, these reforms have created a tremendous opportunity for Oregon, an opportunity to reinvest in our children, our families, our schools, our communities, and our rural economies. The budget that I'm proposing today is built on principles rather than on programs. It aims to align our state resources with the goal of, by 2025, all Oregon high school students end up with a diploma or an equivalent, and that 80% of them go on to get a baccalaureate degree, a technical certificate, or an associate's degree. This is important to ensure that prosperity reaches every corner of our state, and also because every Oregonian deserves an equal opportunity to reach for the American dream. For too long, Oregon has built its budgets in the moment, by the moment, and for the moment. And 4 years ago, we changed all that by developing a 10-year budget frame that actually looks at how the investments we make today impact Oregonians a decade from now. And I'm here to tell you that Oregon is on the pathway to a sustainable budget. We are on track by 2019-21 biennium to erase the structural budget deficit that's plagued us for 25 years since the passage of Ballot Measure 5 in 1990. And thanks to the reforms we've made in healthcare, in public safety, and in our public pension system, not only will we erase that structural budget deficit, but we are on track to have a structural budget surplus for the first time in the 21-23 biennium. This chart is the healthcare budget, and it shows you what the expenditures would have been without the reforms we've made in Medicaid and now extending those to PEB and to and hopefully to OEB. And this is the trajectory today. This delta here is about $5 billion. The total savings are probably higher than 10. When you take that and incorporate it into our general fund, lottery fund budget, you can see that in the 1921 biennium, and this includes healthcare savings, PERS savings, and savings in public safety, we actually have the inflection point where we have eliminated the structural budget deficit and begin to build a structural surplus in the 21-23 biennium. And that is tremendously good news for Oregon because these transformational changes create a significant savings that allow us to make much needed investments in a wide variety of things. So let me start with investments in our children, families, and education. With our attention focused forward, I'm proposing today that we fundamentally change the way we invest in education in Oregon. Over the past 4 years, we've sought to break down silos and create a seamless educational continuum from early childhood through post-secondary education and training, and align policy and governance and funding across that continuum. To prepare all Oregonians to compete globally and to prosper locally, we need to make sure that we produce young men and women who have the capacity to think critically, to imagine, to create, and to innovate. And to accomplish that, the state's role in education has got to change from that of simply a passive funder of enrollment to an active strategic investor in outcomes. And that's exactly what this budget seeks to do. Instead of simply focusing on a number, we seek to set goals and then ensure that our educational system achieves them. This budget is focused on the key pathways to student success. First, the pathway to kindergarten readiness and third grade reading. Secondly, the pathway to high school and post-secondary completion. And third, the pathway to connect education to careers. Education accounts for 50% of the general fund dollars in this budget, a $9.4 billion investment in our schools, our community colleges, and our universities. This historic investment is structured to break down the institutional barriers that have been corrosive to opportunities for our children, particularly students of color and those who live in poverty. My budget puts roughly $7.2 billion into K-12 expenditures, and that is an historic investment in our public schools. To put that into perspective, that is $1.5 billion more than we spent on K-12 when I was elected in 2011. On early learning, this budget targets over $400 million where it really counts, establishing a clear pathway from age 3 to grade 3 with statewide investments in literacy and to develop the full potential of both our teachers and our children. And with these investments, we believe that over 90% of our children will be reading at level in third grade within 5 years. On the pathway from high school to post-secondary education, this budget puts resources towards helping school districts make sure that English language learners are on track. It also makes a $500 million investment in the Community College Support Fund, the largest investment in that fund since the start of the Great Recession. Finally, we've invested $626 million in the Public University Support Fund. I believe that it needs at least another $50 million because of the changes in the formula we're trying to implement, and I will work with legislative leadership to capture the expected increase in revenues over this next biennium and make sure we get those resources to our public universities. And to support every student's journey from the halls of school to the world of work, the budget invests $13 million to revitalize career and technical education, and it invests $15 million to expand math and science and engineering and technology education. In conjunction with Oregon's tribes and other parties, the Oregon Investment Board is leading a $1.5 million tribal attendance pilot project for Native American students through stronger partnerships between schools and parents and families in the tribal community. As you know, chronic absenteeism is very significant among Native American students, and this pilot aims to turn that around. So together, these investments will help break down institutional barriers and make sure that all students get an equal opportunity to thrive and to prosper. This is a true equity budget and seeks to fundamentally begin to close the achievement gap. In addition, I'm proposing today policies and investments to make work pay. This budget continues our earnest efforts to address the disparities that continue to exist in Oregon, ethnic disparities, geographic, demographic, economic disparities that demonstrate the unevenness of our prosperity in the state and the unevenness of our economic recovery. By consciously focusing on equity as a driver of budget investments, we can make progress at addressing these underlying disparities while at the same time continuing to make important reforms and important investments in education, in healthcare, in public safety, and in Oregon's economy. The budget includes tax relief for Oregonians seeking to work their way out of low-wage jobs, to ensure that hard work is actually rewarded with a better life, to ensure that when you get more wages, when your income goes up, you actually have more money, not less money in your pocket, and that you aren't trapped in poverty even as you seek to escape the social safety net. With the creation of the Working Family Additional Tax Credit, this budget will help smooth out the income cliff for those trying to move up the income ladder between $9.10 an hour and $17.10 an hour. The budget also includes $55 million to expand the availability and the quality of employment-related daycare, which is a key support to help low-income Oregonians, particularly working mothers, move up the income ladder and out of poverty. The budget also includes $100 million in bonds that are targeted primarily to increase housing for homeless families with children. The state, as a financer of housing, can and should play a larger role in addressing this need in partnership with counties and with nonprofit organizations that build and operate low-income housing to address the needs of the homeless. Now, the cost-saving actions that we have taken in healthcare and public safety and in our pension system have given us the ability to invest more taxpayer dollars into programs and priorities that better leverage and connect state dollars with private and not-for-profit and philanthropic dollars to get a better leverage and return on outcome. So our rapidly maturing regional solutions centers and regional solution committees are making smart return-driven investments that will bring much-needed relief to struggling rural economies. This budget includes, in fact, over $200 million of investments that are directly targeted to benefit rural Oregon. These investments target both near-term opportunities for much-needed job creation as well as long-term investments designed to create the tools necessary to prepare our rural communities for the realities of the 21st century economy. In the near term, we have put additional resources towards funding our forest collaboratives that continue to create and retain jobs in our timber industry, and we've invested in rural infrastructure. The long-term budget invests in a forest science research center at Oregon State University to seek to find ways to expand the market for Oregon's wood products, and we put $50 million toward water-related infrastructure, which is obviously critical to agriculture and ranchers in the state of Oregon. The budget also includes $25 million invested to set aside $2 million each for each of our 11 economic development regions, regardless of size, so that these communities can launch locally identified projects to address multiple outcomes in health, early learning, education, workforce, and economic development. The budget also includes $40 million in existing and new programs for Oregon's innovation and entrepreneurship community. We know that 70% of the jobs created in the future in this state will come from companies and businesses that already reside in our state. So through investments like the $29.3 million in the Oregon Investment Council, this will bolster Oregon startup companies and actually help the entrepreneurs who are building these new businesses. The budget continues our healthcare investments in our new coordinated care model by applying that model to all healthcare purchased by the state of Oregon, which encompasses 1.3 million Oregonians in the Oregon Health Plan, the Public Employees Benefit Board, and the Oregon Educators Benefit Board. These investments will continue to save money while keeping Oregonians healthier. And while continuing the healthcare transformation work at hand, this budget also begins to heighten the attention on mental health services. All too often, and very often with tragic consequences, people with mental health needs fall into our criminal justice system rather into our healthcare system. So this budget invests an additional $53 million in community health, mental, and addiction services. It promotes encouraging development of collaborative approaches for mental health treatment and prioritizes community health programs. This budget is the framework that will continue our efforts to strengthen Oregon's economy and Oregon's environment. Now, in order to achieve the outcomes in this budget and the investments that we've made, every investment identified has got to get the best possible return. So to do that, to ensure that we implement this budget correctly, I'm convening 4 budget implementation teams around 4 key budget priority areas. The first one is early learning and 3rd grade reading. The second is career and technical education and STEM. The third is rural economic development, and finally, mental health. Over the next few months, these teams will provide guidance to my administration so that agencies and stakeholders are actually aligned around the outcomes, that we maximize return to the taxpayers, and that we drive stronger outcomes. Next week, I'll be announcing the co-chairs and the membership of these 4 implementation teams, as well as the specific task that we have charged them with. As I've said many times, my career in public service has been based on the belief that we are all in this together, that there are things we can do as a community and as a society and as a state to lift us all up, to improve our lives and the lives of our friends and our neighbors, and that we don't have to leave anybody behind. Today, we have an opportunity to deliver on that belief. Today, we have an opportunity to make smart investments in Oregon. So to summarize, this budget fulfills our commitment to full-day kindergarten for every child in this state. It begins to make investments and system changes to ensure that all children are reading at level in 3rd grade. It continues our work to strengthen Oregon's commitment to ensuring that every student has the skill they need to find and hold a rewarding job. And it demonstrates our commitment to reducing poverty, to increasing prosperity, and increasing equity across the state. Let me simply close by saying that in a national political environment that seems to celebrate conflict over compromise, I think Oregon is unique. We live in a state that is defined not by our gridlock, but by our accomplishment. Throughout our state's history, we have come together to do great things, to do hard things, and we have that opportunity again today. To reinvent how we invest in education, to make our communities safer, to make our citizens healthier, to make our state fair and more prosperous, and to invest in rural Oregon. What the famous Western author Wallace Stegner believed is possible through cooperation, I believe is possible here in Oregon, to create a society to match our scenery. I look forward to doing that together. Thank you.